Like, why didn't you do this? And he said, sorry, I was running late for work. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he doesn't see me. Because what he's done has now made me late for work. And he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the impact on me. And he doesn't see how every single thing in our home happens because I ask him to do it, or because I do it myself, or because I planned and organized it. The diaper bag is full because I filled it, right? I put the wipes in there. And I felt so frustrated. And I remember thinking, what's the point? What's the point of doing this with someone else? I might as well just do it alone.
Okay, there's a lot going on here. And at first I want to talk about like what I can understand. Apparently she works from home. At least that's what people on Twitter have seemed to find out about her. And I'm trying to figure out, what is this job that she's working from home so that I can figure that out. It says right here, Connell works from home, so in the mornings and after the workday, she's back on childcare duty. Her husband's work as a utility lineman means he can't work from home, and he's often called for storm duty. So yeah, I have a feeling we don't want hubby to be late for work. Her work, and it's her talking about the mental load, which is of course the very basis of this video and why she was thinking of divorcing her husband, because of the mental load that he puts on her.
Brilliant. But I also think the media conversation around it is absolutely insane, because it doesn't actually reflect, to my eyes, what's actually in the show. This whole business of it's a young boy who kills somebody, that is true. But like, what nobody's talking about is the extent to which in the show that horrible act is motivated by a sustained campaign of bullying against him, ironically by young girls. And I think a thing that's being missed in all of this, and I wanted your thoughts on it, is that it seems to me that all we talk about is like the impact of young boys on the internet, or the impact of the internet on young boys, I should say. But in actual fact, the internet, if you wanted to design a tool that was perfectly suited to the kinds of bullying behavior that are actually much more common amongst young girls, like isolation, meanness, name calling, etc., you couldn't do much better than to invent Instagram, Snapchat, and WhatsApp, could you?
No, I'm very grateful all the time that I didn't grow up in an era where social media existed. But I did go to an all-girls school and had my own fair share of interactions with female bullying of different kinds, which I think probably most women have, and I still have the scars. And so I think, yeah, like the way in which the kind of warfare that women will wield on each other. I was going to say when they're teenagers, but I think a lot of it goes on for life. Some women never grow out of it, I'm sorry to say. I mean, most of the women that I know who are adults who will have had, bullying in work, bullying in adult female social groups, or adult social groups, I should say, 9 times out of 10 it'll be inflicted on them by a woman. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. Some women, stay in that adolescent female warfare for life.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprised at all, because isn't this the way we are? Which is that the focus will be on the boy, the incel, what needs to be trained out of the boys, arising from that TV show. And I'm taking your word for it that there's a lot of female bullying in it, but I haven't seen one mention out of that anywhere except from you.
Well, it's because how it's presented in the show. And I'm going to, if you are somebody who's planning to watch the show, maybe tonight or tomorrow night or whatever, warning, there are going to be spoilers in what I say. But essentially, I mean, when I say there's female bullying in the show, we don't see it. It's not depicted on screen. But basically what we're given is, a terrible murder of a young girl has been committed, and the show takes us through 4 stages of the investigation. And over the course of those 4 episodes, the background to his story is slowly unveiled. And here's a bright young kid who's 12, 13. He has gotten it into his head, as kids of that age sometimes do, that they're not good at anything, that they're not attractive, that they're ugly, that nobody will ever like. And essentially what happens is he goes and he asks this girl out, and she says no. And more to that, she then starts going onto his Instagram pages to comment on his pictures, basically calling him an incel and saying, you'll never be attractive and all of that sort of stuff. And the guy, completely in the wrong, but nevertheless, this is what provoked him to lash out. I'm not trying to victim blame here against this fictional young dead girl. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that, I'm surprised that none of the commentary around the show has focused on that element.
Down to watch a fictional Netflix show. Fictional. Have to emphasize. Let's keep watching.
So it's really confusing that you don't want to know why, how this has made an impact, how parents are now saying we need to know more about smartphone use.
I can read what people are saying about it. I look at research. This is something that I've been looking at for a long time.
You wouldn't want to know straight from the horse's mouth.
One of the things that I'm more bothered.
Straight from the horse's mouth. The Horse's Mouth being a fictionalized show that is not a documentary, which is interesting because this journalist keeps referring to it as a documentary. There's no horse's mouth when it's a fictional show. It in fact would be a fake horse.
Is the fact that just yesterday we had Labour telling us that they're not going to be investigating the rape gang scandal, something which had happened all across the country. That's real. That's happening right now. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a fictional documentary.
Do you think
we had thousands of, if I may just finish, we had thousands of victims, female victims. Those are girls, young women, and some boys too. I met the mother of a boy who killed himself after being a victim. I want to talk about that because that is real. And yes, I'm glad that the Netflix drama is something that people are talking about, but it is not the only thing. There are many other things that are going on. And my job as opposition leader is to hold the government to account, get them to hold a full national inquiry on what is one of the biggest scandals in our country.
Do you stand?
Lyrics and poetry. What I'm saying is that cultural artifacts get deployed and used by the powerful in the same way that AI will get used by the powerful. AI could be used to benefit all of us. Who do you think is going to primarily benefit from it? A cultural artifact might tell a story that talks about poverty, decline, despair, loss of religious affiliation, breakdown of communities. Because if you want to tell a story about Britain and violence, talk about them 3 little girls that were murdered in Southport. That tells you a story about knife crime in Britain. So what is the cultural artifact that's being elevated? Is it a story about 3 little girls being murdered by a kid that was first generation? I think, was he Rwandan? I don't know enough about the story. But what I know is he weren't a white working class kid. I know that. Now, I'm not captivated by the subject of race. Let me say again, because this might become a cultural artifact that gets deployed. I believe we're all part of one human family, and our job here is to love and serve one another. And the reason I know that is because it's in the Bible, and I don't have to think about it myself because God tells me what to think instead of me making it up in my tiny little mind or waiting for cues from a culture that I know is more interested in power and control than it is in ethics, morality, and supreme truths. It's interested in control.
Cleavage area has become shiny because it has become, Sarah, a habit of tourists in particular to go up and fondle her breasts for good luck. And we are told that this is unacceptable. That makes people uncomfortable. And Dublin City Council for the summer on a pilot scheme is going to employ a roving squad of defenders of Molly Malone's honour and virtue to stop people from groping the breasts of the statue. So as a woman, do you feel that your dignity has been enhanced by this crackdown on male public lewdness?
What do you think? I just hope that nobody's getting their head kicked in on the other side of the quays while the police are busy stopping somebody from rubbing some metal.
I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating because of what it says about our society.
Masculine archetypes were vilified so excessively that people stopped wondering what a man was and what a man is supposed to be. The world of sex got very, very complicated. What constitutes consent? We all know what those rules are. Anyone that's ever had sex knows what it is to be in a sexual dynamic. And sexuality, like all animal power, has areas of nuance and complexity to it. But in this time where masculinity itself was put on trial and vilified, any male archetype or cultural figure that benefits from the ongoing flow of male archetypes, and there's a few of those that you might want to list right now, will be vilified and attacked. Young men need role models. They need male role models. They need processes of initiation. And when I say need, what I mean is this. Throughout history, they've always been there. Throughout history, You go to some tribe in the middle of nowhere that ain't been touched by culture. At the age of 13, 14, boys are taken away from their mother, often wounded in some superficial way or another to indicate that they're no longer boys but are in fact men. When you have a culture that vilifies masculinity and infantilizes the population, wanting people to drink soda pop their whole bleeding life and play on video games their whole bleeding life, they don't know what it is to be a man. They don't have their father take them out and say, this is what I used to do, son, now you're going to do it. This is your job. This is your role. This is the way we operate. Part of our function is we protect the community, and we in particular protect and honour women. If those kind of values are all falling apart, they say, oh, there's no such thing as a woman, there's no such thing as a family, there's no such thing as a community, we can all just make it up as we go along. Who benefits from that? The centralised power benefits from it. The reason this story is fascinating is because it's an attempt to assert morality, and it's an attempt to make a moral position that can be utilised by the powerful. At the moment, the story they're telling is a story that will benefit them. If you get to vilify peripheral and marginal voices, that's great, because then you choose which ones to vilify them. If you say, wait a minute, what happened with those 3 little girls getting murdered in Southport? What does that tell us about the way our country is being run? When you get riots in Ireland, a country with a very different cultural history from my own in ways that are pretty significant and important, when they have riots and migration and rejection of globalist melting pot ideology, you got to tell a different story, but they tell the same story. Ireland's racist now. Everyone's racist. Everyone's an incel. It's Andrew Tate's fault. I think it might be a bit more complicated than that. And one thing they don't want you having access to is nuanced and complex information that might help you to decide for your bloody self what the truth is.
Hello. Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support. We're very fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon to be used against people, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK. How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer? Now, that's just sort of general context. I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. I want to thank all of you for your continuing support. I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free. And we will be continuing to discuss this matter. Praise the Lord.
Back into a version of myself today that still lives beneath the surface. It's quiet, it's watchful, and it's waiting. Because trauma doesn't leave like a lover does. It lingers like smoke in the walls and the breath and the air that we breathe. I escaped the people, but the wiring stayed. The ghost didn't follow me out. They were already deep inside. This isn't a story I tell for sympathy. This is actually a truth that I want to offer because silence never saved me, and it won't save anyone else. And maybe if you stay, you'll learn and understand why some of us never really leave. Even after I escaped my traffickers, the wiring didn't come undone. The trauma didn't check out with me. And I was free, but only on paper. In my head, though, I was stuck. I normalized it, even to the point where other things happened. Like, I'd left the room, but the fire came with me. I remember looking at people that I thought were normal, you know, the ones that are smiling, the ones that are living a stable life, the ones that have brunch plans and going to Target trips, and I hated them. I wanted to be nothing like them. it was like I was trapped in this twilight zone. Like they lived in one reality and I was just some shadows slipping between dimensions. I was haunted, I was wired different, I was angry at the air, and that's what trauma does. It rewires your brain to reject safety, because for so long, safety meant danger in disguise. That's not just a poetic metaphor that I'm trying to say, it's literally neurology, because studies show that 77%